In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating the text for this design. We're just going to be doing the CHS text. And I wanted to share with you how we go about tackling a project like this. Now, the text itself is already sized to the finished size, so we've already done that work, and now we want to create this text in rhinestones. Now, I don't have a vector version of the text, and in fact, most of the time I prefer not to work with a vector version, just because the way I go about doing a design, to me it's just easier the way I approach it. So I wanted to share this with you. I mean, we have lots of similar examples, but you can never have too many samples of a given process. So the first thing we want to do is select our bitmap here, come to the Specialty tab and lock this bitmap in place so we can't accidentally move it. And what I have decided I'm going to do, in my mind at least, I have decided that I'm going to do the fill of the letters in SS10 stones, and then we're going to do the outline in SS6 stones. But before we actually commence to doing that, we have to see and do a little exploratory mission to see if that is actually going to work out like I think it would. So what we're going to do is come over here to the Stone tab. Let's go ahead and let's just use hot pink for this example. So I right click on my hot pink color. And we're going to set our stone size is currently set to SS6 stones. But we need to drop an SS10 stone. So you right click on SS10, drop a stone, click anywhere, hit the escape key. So now we have an SS10 stone. And the exploratory mission that I do is I just kind of place this stone and think about, well, how is this going to work out? And you can see that the stone in relationship to the letter, SS10 stones would work out quite well. Well, let's just say, for example, we're not going to do it in this example, but let's just say we wanted to create Living Word Christian School. All right, and the customer says, well, geez, I want that to be SS10 stones. Well, okay, if we were to do that, then you could clearly see to create an R, yeah, that's not going to work so well. Right? So that's why we do these little exploratory missions to see, well, in our mind, we know what we want to do, but is it actually practical or not? So you can see here clearly this text is way too much text. The stones are way too big to get the necessary definition to be able to make that legible. So now that we've created our exploratory mission, now we can go ahead and begin our design process. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come in here and we're going to duplicate this stone. So we're just clicking, dragging, right clicking to make a duplicate. And then we're going to take this stone and I'm going to offset. The amount of offset you see here is automatically calculated for us based on the size and spacing. Then we're going to take this stone, hold our shift key down and select the top stone, come over here to the stone tab, shift add stones, and you can see it will automatically create a string of stones for us. Also, I should point out that it also creates a path in the process of creating a string of stones. So if I wanted to, I could manipulate the path. So that can be useful in certain situations. Not in this one, because we're going to select that whole string, come right here, hover over this one, hit the space bar, and then we're going to right click to make a duplicate on that one. So you can see kind of what it does. That's how it creates our letter H. Alright, so now we're going to select all of those and we're going to delete stone paths. When I first started with rhinestone design, there really wasn't anything out there that would teach me what I needed to do. And so I've kind of just created a method and I've stuck with that method because I find it works quite well. But you'll find that my method is probably a little bit more labor intensive than just clicking a button. But I think the end result kind of speaks for itself. You get a more precise result with this type of approach. That's just my personal opinion. But anyway, let's click on this stone here and we're going to offset this stone a bunch of times. And that will give us an anchor point, and you'll see what I mean here. I'm going to actually grab my freehand pick tool here in CorelDRAW, and then I'm going to hover over the center of this stone, come to the center of this one, and right click. And so yeah, you can see we have perfect spacing. And then we'll go ahead and offset this stone, and we'll offset this stone. Okay, now I just want to explain something to you. You may wonder why we offset those stones individually. Let me just show you something here. If we know we want to offset all three of these stones, we could technically offset 3 stones at once, but these stones are at a slight angle. So when we offset these stones, you see what happens? Because they're at a slight angle, it offsets differently. If these stones were not at an angle, then it would offset perfectly. So when you have a situation like that, then we have to offset these stones individually. Now what we could do, once we have those stones offset, we could actually select that whole row if we wanted to, and we could copy it that way too. So I mean, there's lots of different ways to go about it. You wouldn't have to offset each one individually, but anyhow, just wanted to point that out. Alright, so you can see we have our letter H, nice looking letter H. Let's go ahead and select the whole design and hit check spacing. Now let's take a look at the next step. I'm actually going to peel this away so we can take a look at the next step. Now this is where it gets a bit more technical, but like I said, I think the end result speaks for itself and it's worth the extra effort. So what we need to do now is we need to put a string of stones around our letter H. And this is a common thing that you're going to do a lot. And so what we've done is we've kind of created a technique that will enable us to do this quite simply. So let me show you, or what I consider as simply as you can. So we're going to come over here to the miscellaneous tab, and we have this draw line feature. And so what we're going to do is select 2 stones, draw line. And I should point out too that all of the features here in Easy Stone can be set up as a keyboard shortcut, and certain features like draw line and others are really handy to have as a keyboard shortcut. So I don't need to interact with this form. All I can do here is just, in my case, I have a keyboard shortcut of Alt-D. So a lot of my functions, matter of fact, most of my functions that I run here in Easy Stone, I Alt something. So you know, like reset stones, respace stones is Alt-R, or export a proof image is Alt-E. So, so anyhow, that's just something you could do pretty easily. So we'll just keep going here. So all I'm doing is selecting those 2 stones, you can see, and then Alt-D. And you know, once you get used to it, it's not too bad at all. So now you can see we've kind of created this outer perimeter line. Now what I need to do is select one of them, doesn't matter which one, come to the selection tab and mark that line. And then we're going to select it and hit create selection, and it's going to create all similar, it's going to make a selection of all similar lines that match the same properties. And then I can come to the editing tab and join paths. Then I'll come over here to the stone fill tab, and we're going to make our offset. So we're going to do our advanced offset options, because again, we don't want to have to sit and calculate how much offset we have to do. We're going to go from an SS10 fill to an SS6 fill. So we click on the 10 to 6 option here, and because we're offsetting to the outside, we need to right click. If we are offsetting to the inside, then we would left click. So we're going to create offset, right click, and now we have that offset. Now the cool thing about this is now that we have this offset, we could set our stone color to crystal. We could set our stone size to SS6. Come over here to the stone tab, Alt add stones, because that will detect our corners. Ta-da! Perfection. So now we'll go ahead and delete our stone paths. We'll go ahead and get rid of this inside path as well, because we don't need that. And you can see we have a perfected result. The amount of offset is perfect. The distance between every single one of those stones is exactly identical. So I love that precision. as an architect, that's the only way to do it, is to have it precise, precise, precise. All right, so now let's take a look at this next option here. And again, I kind of approach things I had no one to teach me, so I've kind of just created my own system. And it's kind of a low-tech approach, but let me just show you. So we have our letter C here. I'm going to pull over one stone and see how I can pull this stone. When I pull down, it's below the letter H, right? As soon as I hit my shift key, and this is really, really important to know, as soon as I hit my shift key, watch what happens to that stone. Bing! It'll snap somewhere. So in this case, it snaps to a perfectly vertical movement or a perfectly horizontal movement. All right, and you'll use that all the time when you're doing design work. So we can peel this off. Perfect horizontal movement, we can right click. So this becomes the very bottom point of my letter C. And we'll do the same thing at the top here. So it's a little bit different than the original artwork, perhaps, but we know now that our letter C is going to be the exact same height as our letter H. Now here's where the low-tech approach comes into play. What I need to do is I need to create a row for my letter C, and you'll see kind of how I do this. So what I'm going to do is I have this stone here. I'm just going to hit the space bar, and I told you it was going to be low-tech. So we're going to come in around here, and we're just going to, you could place as many or as few stones as you want. You'll get a feel for what you need to do. We're just eyeballing things here. So we'll just come around here. And we just want to kind of look at this, and we want a nice fluid arrangement here. It doesn't need to be nothing special. All right, so then you kind of have this going on. So now what I want to do is grab my freehand pick tool, and I'm just going to grab all these stones. I deliberately did not grab one. When I hold my shift key down, I'll grab that last one, and then I'll come over here to respace, and it'll respace those stones around. Now you can see the spacing between these stones is quite significant, so I'll just hit my plus minus here next to respace until I get that spacing the way I want it, and then I can delete my stone paths, and I have the outside of my letter C. Now because we're doing 3 rows of stones, then once I have this kind of container that I can work within. So then the next row, I do the same way. I don't really care about spacing. I'm just looking at this spacing more than anything. And I told you it was a low-tech approach, but I find you get a pretty precise result. And so all I'm doing is hitting the space bar. Now if I had a vector file, then the software would attempt to fill that vector shape. But let me show you an example of where the software would fail us. And if you're working with certain design software, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. Do you see here on this letter C, we don't have room above this stone right here for another stone. We do maybe over here, right? But your rhinestone program is going to be very, very specific. And if you're using a vector graphic and you're telling your rhinestone program, fill this vector graphic, it doesn't have the ability to know that, you know what, it's okay to go past that. It doesn't have the ability to know that. So what will happen is the results that you get won't be as nice because it can only fit a stone up to this point. It doesn't know that it's okay to cheat. So the way we're doing it, we're definitely going to be cheating. But we have that luxury as a designer. We can pick and choose. Now, here's the cool thing that we can do with CorelDRAW. We need to select all these stones on the inside. So if you don't already know how this works, the freehand pick tool, if I hold down my Alt key, I can just sweep through these stones. I don't have to actually select them, totally cover them up. Anywhere that marquee is touching a stone, it'll pick that stone up. So you can see all those stones are picked up. Now we have to set a stone for respace. So we're going to hold down our shift key, click on one of these end stones, and then click on it again. So we're deselecting, reselecting, respace. Same thing. Do we need more stones? Well, let's try one. Let's throw another one in there. Or maybe we don't need one. I don't think we needed one. So we can hit the left mouse button to add stones. Or if it's a little bit too tight, we can just right click and get that spacing visually as wide as we want. Once we're happy with the spacing, we can delete our stone paths. And now we get to cheat. So we're going to cheat the original artwork because I think that's what's going to look best. So we'll make a copy. And same thing. We're just going to use our space bar to make our duplicates. We're using that original line as kind of a guide. So this is a real good example of why I don't use vector artwork most of the time, because what happens is the software would only give us a certain result. It wouldn't know to cheat like we're cheating, and so therefore we would still have to go in and manually manipulate perhaps even more stones than doing it this way. So it's kind of a bit of a give and take. So same thing, we're still in our freehand pick tool. So we're going to swipe through this row. We can not swipe that last stone, and then we can hold our shift key down and select the last one and hit respace. That's really key to making this respace tool work. The end stone has to be selected. One of these two ends have to be the last object that we select. Once you get used to how it works, it'll be pretty easy for you. So let's go ahead and delete our stone paths there. So now we have our C done, and let's peel it away because we still have to do our outline. And this will be cool for you. What I've done is I've created lots and lots of designs, and I've come across various different situations, and I find myself, geez, I wish I could do this, and so I've built a tool to do it to simplify my life. So if we go back over here to the miscellaneous tab, remember that draw line function? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to sweep through that interior like so. And remember, just like with respace, we have to specify the end stone. So we'll hold our shift key down, deselect that end stone, hold our shift key down, reselect it. That will tell draw line where the start point is. And if I right click on draw line, it's going to draw a line on a curve. All right. So then we'll go ahead and just use our keyboard shortcut, which is Alt D. And then we'll go back to making our selection. So we'll hold down our Alt key, and we're going to just sweep these outside stones. So now you can see all those outside stones are now selected. We have to specify the start point, shift again, right click on draw line. There's our line, and we'll go ahead and cap this off. Okay, so now we have our line just like we did with our H. So there is a method to my madness here. So we're going to come over to selections, and we're just going to hit create selection because these are the only lines in the entire document that have these properties. So then we'll go to the editing tab, join paths. We'll select that path again. We'll go back to our stone fill, back to advanced offset, 10:6, right click to create our offset. Now here we're going to do something just a little bit different. Before, when we added stones, we did Alt add stones. Here we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to double click on this outline, and we're just going to select this node, hold my shift key down and select that one, and that one. So what we're doing is we're telling EasyStone, I definitely want a stone right at these sharp corners, Everything else you figure out, but definitely I want stones at that sharp corner. So then when we choose add stones, we'll get the exact expected result that we want. Now here's a good place to point something out to you. You see right here, you see that spacing between these stones here? Well, look at this spacing between these stones here. Well, what EasyStone has determined is that it cannot add another stone and maintain that 0.5 millimeter spacing that we requested. So you wind up with this larger gap that you may or may not want. But in our case, we're going to try to see what would happen if we did squeeze another stone in. What would happen? How close would these stones then be? So I can select one of these stones and hit the plus minus, and now we can see, well, that's the gap that we would have. Is that acceptable? Is that not acceptable? In my case, I think it's acceptable. So we'll leave it. Now down here, we have a slightly different length of line. Well, if we hit plus here, you can see that that gap would be way too close to cut very nice in our template, so we'll have to back it off. It's not going to work. So sometimes there's a give and take. Sometimes that gap is wider than we'd like, but it doesn't have room for another one. All right? So then what we'll do here is we'll come in here and we'll delete our stone paths. And now all of that has gone away. And now we have a really nice C to go with our really nice H. All right, so then we're off to the races on our letter S. And you'll see that the process is almost identical to what we did on our letter C. But with the S, it's actually kind of a little bit more involved, and you'll see why here momentarily. So just like with our C, peel off a stone, hold your shift key down to constrain to a perfectly horizontal movement. Right click to make a duplicate. Same thing up top. Peel off a stone. Right click to make a duplicate. Then let's go ahead and just come in here. We'll do something like this. Kind of follow the original path. So all I'm doing is dragging spacebar, 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 spacebar. Come around, spacebar, 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 spacebar. We'll do something like that. Okay, so this is our top. And remember, we got to fit 3 stones in there. So sometimes we have to cheat a little bit. So we'll go ahead and pull this down a little bit. We want to make sure that we can get 3 stones in there. And have our letters more or less the same height. Sometimes I will cheat on the height of our lettering. Just depends on what I feel I need to do. So we do need to have room in there for 3 stones. So same thing here. We'll go ahead and make some duplicates. And we'll go ahead and continue the process. And the first go around, I just try and get it close. I'm not too concerned about all the specifics. And I'm deliberately going to make this a little bit more complicated than it probably needs to be as far as the way I'm going to place these stones, because I want to show you the selection tools in CorelDRAW. If you know those selection tools in CorelDRAW inside and out and backwards, and how they work and how you can use them, it's going to be a lot easier to do your design work here in CorelDRAW. So I'm going to just barely put these stones in here. But you can see that there's nothing very difficult about this process. You could see we're cheating like crazy from the original artwork. So if we had a vector, this process, the result would not look like this at all. Your vector software would say, hey, you can't fit 3 rows of stones in here, because you can't. But we can cheat a little bit, and it will look a lot nicer if we have 3 rows, 3 rows, and 3 rows. So All right, so now we have to use Easy Stone to fix up this letter S and make it look pretty. So again, we're going to grab our freehand pick tool, and here we go. Hold down your Alt key, and we're going to sweep that first row of stones. Sweep, sweep, sweep. Anything that is touching that marquee, or like there's two stones right here. See these two stones right there? Those two stones right there? They're not touching the marquee, but they are inside the selection. So you'll see all of those stones all the way around. See that little tick mark? That tells you that stone's selected. So it will get selected. So every stone along there is selected. We're going to have to define our start point. So Shift, deselect, Shift, reselect. Come to your editing tab and respace, and it will space those stones out for us and create a path. But you can see that the stone spacing is a little bit too loose. So let's add a stone. Let's try adding one more. And I have a decision to make. I'm going to drop one stone back out and be happy with that. Okay? So now let's go ahead and set the outside. So we're going to do the same thing. And once you get used to these tools and how they work, making selections is going to be a breeze. So Alt key, and we're going to click and drag, and we're going to sweep, sweep, sweep that outside row. I'm coming around, back. So you can see how I created that selection. And now if you look, every one of those stones is selected. Before CorelDRAW X6, believe it or not, that was a real pain. So that freehand pick tool here in CorelDRAW X6, oh, I love it. So anyhow, Shift key, deselect, reselect, respace. It's going to set those outside stones for us. We can add a stone if we think we need it. I think that works just fine. So we'll go ahead and delete our stone paths. So now the tricky part, picking those inside stones. And you can see we have one stone that's a little bit too close there. We'll just peel it back a little bit. But everything else is kind of where it needs to be, but you can see the spacing is off and so forth. So we're going to use our freehand pick tool that we deliberately made this process difficult for us, because you'll see once you understand how the tools work, making selections is going to get a whole lot easier for you. So freehand pick tool, hold down the Alt key, click and drag. We're going to sweep. Sweep that inside row. Make sure you get it. You can squiggle over if you don't think you have a stone. Squiggle over it. See what I'm doing there? Squiggle over it. If you don't think you have it, just squiggle back over it. So we squiggled over all those lines, and you can see we came right back up again. And we let go, and you can see that all of those stones on the inside are selected. So I just want to re-emphasize this point, because if you understand how that freehand pick tool works, I'm telling you, your design work is going to be so much easier. So we're going to sweep and over the stones, and then we're going to come back. We can't come out here, because then we get stones that are going to be selected we don't want. So just remember, let's put that stone back there. I hit undo too many times. So really important point to get used to this freehand pick tool. Can't stress that enough. But there's our freehand pick tool, Alt key. We're going to sweep these stones. I don't know if I got that one, so we'll go back. And then we're going to come right back again, right over the top of these stones. And when we do that, all of them will be selected. We have to specify where the beginning point is here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Shift and respace. So all of those stones have been shifted and respaced, equal spacing all the way around. We can try adding a stone if we want to along the way. I think that will look okay. And we'll delete our stone paths. And we have our letter S. So let's go ahead and peel out our letter S and add the stones around the perimeter for it. And then you can see how good that looks. And I took a lot of time to explain that process, but I'm telling you, when you actually sit down and do it, this is a couple minute job. I mean, it's really, really simple once you understand the process. But look at how good the spacing and everything looks. And you would never get a result like that. Even if we had this in vector, you would never get a result like that just by clicking a button. It just doesn't happen. So that process works really, really slick. So let's throw an outline around our letter S. Same thing. We are still in our freehand pick tool. Alt key, sweep those outside stones. Quick glance to make sure we have everything selected, and we do. Specify that endpoint. Go to the miscellaneous tab, right click on draw line. Select these two stones. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut for the end caps. Sweep, sweep, sweep these outside stones. Like so. Quick glance. Yes, we have them all selected. Specify our endpoint. Come back to our editing tab. Or no, I'm sorry, we got to do draw line. So we're going to right click, draw line, which we have. That line is still selected. So we're going to go to selections and create selection. It's going to select all similar property lines just like it. Editing tab, join paths. Select that path. Come to our stone fill tab, advanced offsets, 10:6, right click. Just like with our letter C, we're going to double click on that. And we're going to select that node, hold our shift key, select that one. Select this one, and we'll let EasyStone figure out the rest. Hit add stones. We're going to look at our end cap. Yes, I'm going to squeeze another one in there. Maybe I'll squeeze another one in here. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So we'll go ahead and select our design. We'll delete our stone paths. And there we go. So we'll go ahead and pull that over here. We'll throw this behind a weed box so we can marvel at our work. And oh, look at here. There's a collision there that we didn't catch. So let's go ahead and do this. So you see there's a collision here. So we can fix this. So we'll delete one. We'll position one. And then all we have to do is respace these. So I'll just come in here. Respace those. Even spacing. And then we have to respace all the way up to the top. So what I do is I just come in here and sweep this outside row up to right there. So you can see all of these stones will then be selected. Oops, I didn't hit my Alt key. I was wondering what was happening. I hit my Shift key. There we go. So now you can see all those stones are selected. We didn't get this one. And we didn't get this one. So now we'll hit respace. Delete our path. So now you can see all that has been spaced a little bit nicer there. So now we can throw a weed box around. And now we can marvel at our work. So now you can see how that works. We have it pretty good looking. You can see our H is probably a little bit tighter stone spacing than our C and our S, but that's okay. It's still going to look great. You're probably not going to notice that small difference in spacing once it's actually on a shirt. So anyhow, you understand the process. That's the most important thing, is the basic process that you use. And I know I probably made it seem more complicated than it is, but once you try it a few times, you'll discover it's actually pretty easy, and of course the results that you get will be spot on because you're taking control, making it look exactly the way you want it to look. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope it wasn't too confusing for you. Go through it a couple of times and I'm sure you'll get it. Thanks for watching.